All right, so I'm here with Sean Wang, also known by his handle online Swyx. I think he's a man who increasingly needs no introduction, but for folks who haven't heard of him, I'll give a brief introduction. So, Sean, I think, was a key pillar of the React community early on, but I think he's best known for a lot of the material he publishes while he learns and builds in public on topics ranging from front end JavaScript to lately this AI revolution. And he's really been at the forefront of the latest trends and developments in large language models and code generation. And he's been an extremely helpful voice, turning a lot of these very technical, very difficult to understand concepts, making them accessible to a wide audience. So he's got this great podcast called Latent Spaces, which I think is now one of the top 10 or one of the most popular like technical podcasts anywhere, which is amazing because it's only been around for what, like 2 months?
4 months, yeah.
4 months. Okay. And he's also got this project that we're going to talk about today, which is a small developer. So basically what that is an exploration of what's possible with code generation with both GPT-4 and 100,000 token context windows from Anthropic. So the gist of it is we're going to take a look at small developer from a developer's point of view. We're going to use Cody, an AI coding assistant that Sourcegraph has developed to kind of explore it. But we got the source of ground truth right here, the creator and core maintainer of it. So Sean, thanks for taking the time and being with us today.
Thanks for having me. That's a really great intro. I should also mention that I've been on the Sourcegraph podcast, which is really fun. Um,
Yes.
and yeah, I really enjoy the work that you're doing there, and like the guests that you pick are really great. Present company accepted. Um,
No,
I
present
so I
company very much included, but thank you for the kind words. So, Sean, you want to give us an overview of small developer and what it is?
Yeah. So Small Developer is this like kind of side project that I had that like, kind of really blew up. It's about to cross 10,000 stars now. And really it's my exploration of whole program synthesis from a prompt. And it mostly started out of my desire to be more productive. I think that everyone should be more productive in the age of AI, and Copilot and Cody and ChatGPT are ways to get there. By the way, the way to access ChatGPT is I built my own menu bar app, right? So like what is Sourcegraph? And I can syndicate that out to 4 different chat apps. And I highly recommend that everyone just build little apps that they can use to maximize their productivity. And if you don't feel more productive, there probably is low hanging fruit that you can do. So like, what can I do to make little chat apps like that? Make little Chrome extensions like this one that I have that just enhance my life every single day. I think a lot of people are trying to build the equivalent of the level 5 self-driving car, but really, we need to be aiming at level 2, level 3 now, because that's what we're capable of and actually would be useful today.
Mhm.
So small developer is this process of it's just essentially like 100 line of code, Python and English file that basically generates a whole program. And the program today is very small. That's why it's a small developer. It only does Chrome extensions, ChatGPT plugins, a React app, a VS Code extension,
Mhm.
a CLI. Like really small things. Like not. This is the largest scale app that has been attempted so far that I'm aware of. Where it's a React and Node and MongoDB app. Uh, but the whole thesis is that you start with a very small prompt. So the prompt would start looking like this. Uh, where is here's the README. The prompt would be like Python main.py, and then it's like Chrome extension that when clicked, open a small window with a page where you can enter a prompt, blah blah blah. And you can toggle models whatever you want. But after a while, you would just like keep adding requirements to your prompt until it starts to get very unwieldy. And the main insight or realization, or I guess I was the first to try this, was to put it in Markdown. And so here's the full prompt as a Markdown file. And you'll notice a few things. One, I'm just writing English to code, right? I'm using the structure of Markdown, the bullet points of Markdown, to order like when I want things to happen in sequence.
Mhm.
And I'm even teaching it some things like check extension storage for an API key, and I'm naming the variables, and it's going to respect those variables because Markdown is very good at respecting variables.
Mm.
It's also very good at CSS, and I'm just mixing it in, wherever I feel it's appropriate. I'm saying I want a tall, rounded CSS animated red and white candy stripe loading indicator, and I name it loading indicator.
Yeah.
I'm also giving it code inside of Markdown, and then I'm also giving it a prompt inside of Markdown inside of code. So there's just an infinite level of nesting that is going on here. See, here's the prompt inside of the code.
That's awesome.
There's an infinite level of nesting. GPT-3 also has this knowledge cutoff of November 2021. And so if it has unfamiliar APIs, you can just kind of teach it APIs by dumping
Mhm.
it. So Anthropic, is a new API, and I just curled it, got the response, and now GPT-3 has learned the structure of the response, right? And
Yep.
whether it's writing JavaScript or Python or whatever, it just knows the structure and it can react accordingly. Just because all of this is in all of this, it's learned how to interpret. So it's really, really powerful. I even add in debugging notes. This is essentially my logbook. And every time it runs to an issue, I can kind of just debug it and paste the results of the debug here so it never repeats it again.
Yep.
So this is 134 lines of Markdown, but it's just really useful, and it generates something like this, where it's a Chrome extension that has shared dependencies across the background scripts, the content scripts, the popup.html, popup.js, and styles.css, and the manifest.json. So it really needs very high coherence across files, and that's been the hard part about this sort of whole program synthesis.
Mhm.
But once you do that, you have this little. I'll just play the YouTube video because that's a little bit faster. Once you do that, you have this little Chrome extension that you can put in and use on any website, right? So I demo it here in the sort of demo video that I put up.
Mhm.
And here I am using it. Click it. Specify whatever prompts. All this was given in my prompt. So it's a prompt to encode and prompt.
Yep.
That's the animated CSS thing that I specified with the 10 pixel height.
That's awesome.
And then it's reading the file. It's generating the code in the format that I want. And none of this was hand coded. It was hand debugged, but I've moved up one level of abstraction by just writing the giant spec of prompts and then generating the code. And so that's where it is for today. And in order to increase program complexity, I'm going to have to do a little bit of an architectural rewrite. But it's amazing that this works.
That's awesome. And so that prompt, that Markdown file, it's really, really long. You didn't just sit down and write that in one go, right? Like this was like you wrote something
Nope.
simple, you tried it,
Yeah.
you saw what broke, then you added
Yep.
more, and this is kind of like built up over time.
Yeah. And so I kind of call this I guess human centric, in a sense that there's no point trying to I call this human centric. There's no point trying to single shot this whole thing
Yeah.
because honestly there's two reasons why you should not do it. One, the models aren't good enough yet, but in a sense the models will never be good enough because you didn't tell it what you wanted, right? Most people are completely greatly underspecify their requirements. So how is this supposed to guess your mind? One thing that was a really important design goal for me was that you'll be able to eject and essentially throw away the AI and just
Mhm.
keep coding, right? So that's why I needed like a clean folder that it would generate to a folder
Mhm.
that is sort of like a clean room implementation or whatever.
Mhm.
Because then I can sort of get in it inside of this folder and then carry on as though I just clone the starter template.
So this generates, you can think of this as like generating the scaffolding and the boilerplate and kind of like the V0 of the project. But then after that, you as a human can go and like make your manual edits to the code and continue where
Yes,
the robot left off.
and that's where Cody comes in.
Nice segue. So, you mentioned once you're done with the scaffolding, the first part of the project, now you're editing an existing code base. There's kind of existing code context, and sort of one of the things that we try to do with Cody is make it easy to access that existing context and ask questions of the code base that rely on the existing context to both answer the questions that you're asking and also generate code that fits within that context. So, just as a brief introduction, so I have Cody and Sourcegraph open to the small developer repository. And I can ask it, a high level question like, what is small developer? and Cody will read the docs and kind of give me a summary. So probably read the README as well as some source files. So it gets the human-centric part. It's talking about generating coherent whole programs from prompts.
Now, so the question is, how did it know to do bullet points? Is that because I did bullet points?
That's a good question. I mean, it mostly it indexes on the contents of the files that it reads. So I'm guessing it read through the README, and I'm
Yeah.
guessing it looked at some of the structure here and mimicked it.
And do you just
Uh,
have super long context or something? Because that's a lot of fast.
it is a lot of files. We're not reading the entire file necessarily on each go. We're actually
Mhm.
extracting snippets that are relevant in each file and reading those. We do have plans to support longer context windows. So this is using Anthropic underneath the hood. And so Anthropic has the 100,000 token context window model, the Claude 100K model. And we're playing around with
Nice.
that. We plan to add support for that soon. Yeah, one of the nice things here too is, like if there are people learning to program or like figuring out your project in other languages, you can actually ask it, what is small developer? What's your favorite human language of choice other than English?
Oh, I guess. What is it? What Esperanto?
Esperanto.
Let's see if it knows.
That's a tough one. Let's see.
I mean, it should be it should be more programmatically understandable. So for those who don't know, Esperanto is a uh, designed language by linguists that is
Yep.
intended to be perfect. Like it didn't evolve, so it doesn't have any imperfections or exceptions
Yes.
to any rules.
Yeah, so
This looks like
basically someone tried to
Turkish.
invent like the perfect like universal human language. That I think that the vision was that everyone would stop speaking their native languages and would all speak Esperanto at some point.
And now you have 15 languages.
Yeah. Classic engineering pitfall. But
Yeah,
yeah, it keeps going.
right. But like this looks like Czech or like Turkish. Yeah.
Uh Let me shut it up. Let's
Yeah, do it,
see.
do it,
Let's
do it.
see what Google Translate detects the language as.
Nice.
Interesting.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, yeah, it should speak it pretty well.
Wow. Not bad.
Yeah. There you go.
Interesting. Yeah, it is funny how like these large language models have such a command of like so many different diverse languages. Even though I'm guessing like most of the training corpus was English. It's really
Right,
really
right.
impressive.
Yeah, I mean, well, what you need, what we're getting at is this sort of like internal representation of what is language that is free of any
Yeah.
individual details of language.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool from a linguistics point of view and maybe like a, study of the brain point of view.
Yeah. All right, so like another common question, you explained this earlier, but me coming in as like a junior developer, I'm kind of like, show me a simple example of how to use small developer. Let's see how good it is at that. Okay, let's rate how it did here. So it asks you to install the requirements.
So like
Um,
the better I write my README, the better it will do, right? Because it's
yeah,
basically kind of just repeated back the README. I mean, it does change some details, which is actually pretty cool. So look at step 2 in the reply.
yeah,
That is something I did not write.
interesting.
Um, yeah, so that was created by Cody, and that's cool. Um,
Cool.
yeah, but like I wonder how it would do if you like deleted the README. Um,
Yeah,
right, you know what I mean? Like, would it still somewhat be able to generate a README? I mean, READMEs are one of the most scannable things. I bet it has
yes.
tons of READMEs in there.
Well, let's try asking something that it wouldn't be in the README, like maybe some like question about the implementation detail. So,
Yeah,
uh,
sure. Like, so, what would the prompts use inside a small developer?
what are the prompts?
So there's 3 prompts, and I know that from working on it, but maybe you can extract it, give the link to the the line of code, the prompt is defined. There you go. That's the first one.
Okay.
Oh, that's the fourth one. I didn't expect it to pick up on that one.
Interesting.
This one, yeah, this one is, oh, yeah. So it picked up one of the core prompts and then another of the side prompts, which is fine. We
Yeah.
we weren't specific enough.
Yep.
And then
It says the main prompts
uh,
are the initial code generation prompt, prompt to get file paths, prompt to get debugging suggestions, and then I guess
yeah,
it picked up on the default prompt.
it misses some of
Notes.
those. Yeah, it misses some of those.
Interesting. I wondered which files it read. I did ask it to uh,
Yeah, so
say which
I mean, it
files.
really only needs to read main.py. So it's getting confused because
Okay.
I have a few branching paths here. So main.py has 3 prompts. And then
Yep.
yeah,
Okay, got it. Here's the actual prompt, or one of the actual
yes.
prompts.
So it picks up that one, and then there's others.
Okay, cool. So you're also working on another project called Small Logger, right?
Yeah.
Do you wanna tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can probably share my screen too because this one actually has a really nice Cody use case. Like I actually use Cody for this one.
Oh, cool.
So let me share my screen. Um, and I honestly I think it's just like you onboarded me to Cody, and then I was like, okay, now I understand. I have it installed. I have it set up. Like
Yep.
let's actually go pull it in. So what is this experiment? So it happens a lot in app development, but also in particularly in prompt engineering, that
Mm-hmm.
you need to log your progress and figure out what happens in your system. So there are tons of loggers out there, but they mostly log to the console. Um, and so let me see if I can run one of these. Oh, maybe I do new test.njs. Maybe I'll do this one. Um, oh, oops. I may have to. I'll have to go and validate that key later on. But basically,
We can
basically
blur it
what it
out.
does. No, it's okay. I'll invalidate the key. So basically, like there's tons of these loggers out there, right? That that basically like add stages to your execution.
Yep.
But I think it's just really nice to develop your own inside of the file system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and then be able to do things like track the invocations. So if I do like node, this one. So here it's doing some function calling,
Mm-hmm.
and it's waiting for the API. So it's printing everything to a terminal, but because some of these responses are super long, it might get cut off. So I just prefer to persist everything inside of a JSON file, together with the file location, the time that it started, so I can get a little bit of a trace
Yep.
for performance and the inputs and outputs. And then I also want to be able to indent the files here, so I can see like where I have a potential loop. So for example, here I have a retry loop, and I can kind of indent my logs. So I'm just kind of using my IDE as a log UI. So that's all cool, and I think this is a really useful tool for prompt engineering. But the thing is that here I do the individual sequence that is long running, right? This one took 18 seconds to run.
Mm-hmm.
If I am doing prompt engineering, I actually need to like run the same sequence a few times, and then do it, and then compile it in a spreadsheet. So I basically asked Cody, like, how do I take all these logs, and and convert it to a CSV file,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it was able to read my code base and like give me a reasonable starting point for the CSV file. I ended up realizing that I didn't want CSV, I wanted TSV because of all the commas that are very common in JSON. So it doesn't make sense to to write CSV. But once I switched it over to CSV, I was able to do something like this, right? Like node npm run tsv, and it
Hmm.
generates this little tsv file here, which I can then upload to Google Sheets, and actually do comparisons. Right?
That's
Like
awesome.
uh, so obviously, like, this is very lo-fi tooling, and you should probably use a professional logging platform. But this way you don't pay anyone.
Also, I love the kind of like spreadsheet based approach. I feel like people underuse spreadsheets. They're so useful, especially with
Spreadsheets are all you need.
yeah.
Yes.
Spreadsheets are all you need. Like how many times do you actually have like quote unquote big data where you need something else that you can't load into like Google Sheets or Excel?
Yeah, I think it's just nice to have uh this data just like lined up here, so that you
Yep.
can do arbitrary computation. So here I can do, for example, human ratings, right? Like human rating, um, and I can give this like, all right, this is a 5 response, this is a 3, this is a 2, this is a 1, whatever.
Yep.
And then I can actually, do a group by based on the payload type. Um, so like any arbitrary thing like that, I try to make it as flexible as possible. So for
Yep.
example, I'm basically turning a structured thing into an unstructured row. So I am choosing to have some inaccuracies around, like, conformance around a schema. So here, this 45, I don't know where, I actually don't know where it comes from, but it must come from
Yeah.
the source output itself. But I've just chosen to spread out all the top level object keys.
Yep.
And so I'll just like move the human rating over one row. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I just think it's like a really nice way um to do transformations. But
Hmm.
I'm not really promoting this transformation thing, right? Like, it's a very, very janky kind of prototype.
Yep.
But it is the lowest possible lo-fi implementation of, I guess, a logging or analysis system, where you don't pay Databricks or Datadog 100K a year, just to look at your own data.
That's awesome. Yeah, free is an excellent feature.
um, Yeah, so I mean, I would like to use Cody for use cases like this, right? Like,
Yep.
um, use the knowledge of my existing file system, and be able to generate code based on that, so that I can do things like this.
Yep.
And this is pretty helpful.
Awesome. That's great to hear. What are some of the things that we could do better? Or, what's your top one or two feature requests or improvements to Cody?
Oh, I mean, uh, I think I may have told you more, which is like, um, I think I tried to use it in other situations, and it just wasn't aware of the environment that I was in.
Yep.
And that obviously matters a lot. Like the packages that I've already installed, the
Yep.
like so pay special attention to pack manifests, right? Like package JSON or requirements.txt, anything like that.
Yep.
Because these have out uh, uh, these have extreme weighting in determining what the output is going to be, right?
Yep.
I think I was working on like a Next.js app, and I needed a Next.js specific suggestion. And Cody didn't realize that and gave me an Express JS suggestion,
Yeah. Yeah. That's no
which
good.
was not useful to me. Um, and then so that was the first thing, which is like proper environment awareness, because that is the strongest determinant of the validity of the type of code that you're going to run.
Yep.
And then the second thing is sometimes the question that I ask is wrong. So I want pushback on my question,
Right.
right? Like, so for example, the thing that I was working on in the Next.js app was a serverless function doing import fs and fs.read file from
Yep.
a file system, but the file was not going to be present in the serverless function because when a Next.js app is deployed, it's broken up into a whole bunch of little bits, and
Yep.
so
Yep.
when it runs in dev and it doesn't run in production, right?
Yep.
Very, very common issue. I know it just because I'm an experienced JavaScript developer. Most JavaScript developers who are new to this will completely trip up and fall apart.
Yeah.
So there should be tons of Stack Overflow data out there to like tell you about this. So I just tested Cody on it, and it didn't get to that step of questioning me.
Yep.
Question the question.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think the analogy you presented at kind of like the beginning of this chat is spot on. I think it's like right now we're trying to go from like level 1 self-driving to like kind of like level 2, where it's like just going from like straight up local autocomplete, asking questions that take into account more context from your broader code base, but it doesn't yet have kind of this like uh almost like semantic understanding of the structure of the code and kind of like these big picture high level things that are really important to answering questions like a human developer would. So maybe the next step for us is to revisit the prompting structure and to look at the context that we're providing to make the context fetching mechanism a little bit more project aware.
Yeah. And the benefit of you being domain specific is you can trade off, uh, other forms of intelligence for code intelligence. Hey,
Totally.
hey. Uh, and I was at a party with some OpenAI folk over the weekend, and they have this self-imposed restraints on doing that sort of stuff. For them, it is if it's domain specific, it's not worth pursuing. They must
Hmm.
pursue general intelligence, right?
Interesting.
That's fine for them. That's their goal, is they want to build AGI. But the rest of us, we just want to build tools, right? Like,
Yep.
so I think that's great. Then the other thing I want to respond to in your comment was, um, you said that they don't have semantic understanding yet. I think they do have semantic understanding. I think we
Okay.
need to break that apart and say what levels of semantic understanding exist,
Right.
and it's probably at level 1. So like
Yeah.
further subdivide this thing,
Right. There's
because
enough
that helps
semantic
you.
understanding to like take into account code snippets and pieces of documentation and kind of like pattern match against that to generate
Yeah,
an answer. But it's
yeah,
not yet like it wouldn't, there's no model that I'm aware of that would know, hey, like, you asked a question that requires like knowledge of the structure of the code. So now like, let me use a tool or invoke a tool to read the appropriate files. I think that's probably coming soon with all the like stuff being done in the like agents space. But as far as I know, it's still very rough and very unreliable.
yeah. Um, yeah. It'll get better. But it's an exciting time to be messing around with this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would just say, like, in small developer, the default example, because it has the most code examples of a Chrome extension, is Chrome extension v2, like the Chrome
Yep.
manifest v2. Um, that is now outdated, deprecated,
Yep.
and therefore I have to tell it, hey, do Chrome manifest v3, and it just like does all the changes,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
which is great. I think Cody and every other code tool just needs to pay, like, you kind of need to feature engineer the highest order bits of code
Yep.
generation,
Yep.
which is language, environments, whatever. I can't even think of the rest. I don't know if you can think of anything else.
Language environment and kind of like build tooling, and
Installed
like
modules.
general
Yeah.
product structure, dependencies. And I think one of the things that where our mind goes as well is like when you're in a specific file or you ask a question about a specific function, like being able to pull like references or usage examples through the code graph, because that's also kind of like structural knowledge. It's stuff that's like, you could get it through AI kind of, but like we have a much more direct way of getting it, which is like just use the compiler. Compiler understands the structure of the code, and so you
Right.
have these things that kind of like walk the reference graph of code. That context is easy to fetch.
Yeah. So I think, like, that's the rough space I'm playing in. I am basically working on a rewrite a small developer to
Yep.
be a recursive agent. Because right now it does single shot. And then it requires the human to look at the prompts and figure out, like, what to do next.
Yep.
And I think I can build in a loop that does multi-shot much better than previously because of the new function calling API that has been
Yep.
released recently. So I wrote about this in on latent space. If you want to check it out, I basically started creating a circuit diagram and
It's awesome.
called it like the equivalent of the XOR gate. Like, once I have an XOR gate, I can build up any other thing. I need a general purpose enough unit to compose.
Yep.
And once I can teach the machine how to compose itself, I think it'll be a lot more capable.
That's awesome. I'm very much looking forward to the next iteration. Do you have any idea of when that will come online, or is it still kind of like
I don't know. I'm
that's fine.
it's R&D. It's weird. It's like you have to research it, and then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't know when necessarily it'll conclude. But I do have to like launch something because I feel like so I'm hoping to launch something this week, basically,
cool.
to actually show people that I'm working on it. Because I think one part of AI is that you definitely have to juggle the twin needs of putting your head down and doing the work, but then also telling people about the work that you're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah,
so that you get feedback on it, and then also so that if other people had the idea, you at least like register that you're like you got there first or whatever. It's like some bragging rights. That is actually very important
yeah,
in this space. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Well, that's great advice. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through small logger and small developer. It
Yeah, my
was
pleasure.
all very exciting, and thanks for being a great
Oh,
spokesperson and teacher.
yeah.
Yes.
You
Last
you
thought.
might like the last one, which is small talk. Uh,
Small talk.
I had to do it. I had to do
That's
it.
awesome. Wait, what? Real
Uh,
quick, what is small talk?
I will show you. You want to see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Smalltalk is open source code interpreter. Do you are you familiar? Have you played with code interpreter at all?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So code interpreter is a officially maintained OpenAI maintained ChatGPT plugin that
Okay.
is under a waitlist that most people don't have access to, including myself.
Okay.
And so what it does is it is is a fine tuned version of ChatGPT that is tuned to write code and execute it
Got-
inside of the UI. So I can do something like I'm going to switch models to Cloud Instance. So this looks like ChatGPT, which is nice. I'm going to switch models and write like plot a sine curve from
Mhm.
1 to 100.
Mhm.
And this is doing something different. It's generating code as a response, right?
Mhm.
But it's also able to plot code with matplotlib,
Mhm.
and I hope it works. I do get nervous whenever it slows down like this. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Okay,
there we go. That's
okay,
awesome.
nice,
Wow.
very good,
That's
very good.
awesome.
So then you can also upload files. So I'm gonna upload a file. This is a random CSV that I grabbed off the internet.
Mhm.
And I can do a data analysis on that file, right? So what are the headers of this file? So
Mhm.
you're basically, instead of writing a notebook, this is almost conversing, and you have this notebook in front of you as well, right?
Mhm.
So plot the crimes as a pie chart. So this happens to be a crime database with crime number, date, location, beat, and all that.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so put legends on. It's- so you're really it's great because now you don't have to learn pandas or matplotlib
Yeah.
or
That's awesome. It's like you're kind of your very own data scientist.
which I just think it's super cool. And yeah, so small talk will be the next one, and the whole point being that I think small menu bar right now I have all these panels, and I'm just going to replace Anthropic with a small talk,
Cool.
and then you'll be able to query it all the time.
Yeah. That's awesome.
There you go.
Boom. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing all this, Swix. This is awesome. You are probably one of the most productive people I know, and very much looking forward to the next iteration of a small developer.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.